Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Adam, and I'll be your moderator. We're joined by Dr. Jonathan Ng. If you have any questions, please add them into the Have a Question box. If you'd like to chat with attendees, please click the chat icon in your control panel at the bottom of your screen. Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation live or on demand, and this webinar is sponsored by SprintRay. Dr. Ng, welcome back.
Well, thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. It is an honor and privilege for me to be here with all of you and spending time to talk a little bit about how this technology has really been used in my office. I think for those of you who are considering it or are using this technology, you'll find that the technology is not only ever changing, but is improving all the time. And so my name is Jonathan, Dr. Jonathan Ng. I'm a prosthodontist in Vancouver. As mentioned, I love everything prosthodontics, but one of my favorite passions is digital dentistry, and I've been practicing that kind of digital dentistry since early 2010 and before that. So it's been a joy to see how it's evolved, and hopefully I can show you some of that today as we work together on the time that we have. So in the session that we're going to be spending time today, we're going to talk about 3D printing and what it's like in action, specifically when it comes to exploring how Bruxism appliances and splint appliances have been used. And for this time of the pandemic that we've been going through and coming out of, it surely has been a time when people have been grinding their teeth, wearing their teeth, and so hopefully we'll be able to get ways to protect the teeth for our patients. As I mentioned, this is my hometown. Here I'm in Vancouver. Love to have any of you guys here. If you're visiting, please keep in touch. Easiest way is through any of these means here. We got social media, we've got websites, and as well Instagram. I think that's going to be the most easy to get in touch with me. One of the things people often say is, that's a beautiful view, a picture that you took from Google. I would urge you to take a look at my Instagram and know that that is actually not a Google image. That is a picture from my office. There I am sitting, doing some treatment planning, looking out at the view. And the clouds roll in. We're right above the clouds. Looks kind of nice there as well. But when the sun sets, we look there as well too. But one of the things I love to do, as I mentioned, technology is huge in my practice. I went from when it was non-digital, learning all that in dental school, to evolving into digital technology. I was the first in Canada to have the Trios 3 or Trios 4. I was also the Trios 3, but Trios 4 here, as you see, wireless. I was the first one to do that. I had a little unboxing of that. Also, the SprintRay printer, which we're going to be talking a little bit about as well today. We thank them as well for helping out with this event. Is that I also do a little unboxing of that on my YouTube page. So for those of you who this is a shameless plug for my YouTube page, you can take a look at that and see some of the little videos that I've made there. So. Now, prior to the pandemic, we were able to meet like this. This is me at a large symposium in Stockholm, Sweden. I was fortunate to be there, I think, a few months before everything shut down. But take a look in this picture. See if you can see where I am. Just take a quick look. I'll give you a minute to take a look, and a little bit of Where's Waldo. I'll help you out here. There I am. So not a lot of physical distance happening there, but as we know, things are opening up. We're starting to have more of these conferences and events. So I'm really looking forward to being with many of you in the future. But for now, we will still continue to do as we do, where we have an opportunity to still learn from each other and through this medium. I think webinars are great because we can still have the opportunity to share knowledge without the constrictions that sometimes we still have there. So one day we'll be back together doing this kind of things. But in the time that we do have, I want to spend a little bit of moments talking to you about just splints, how they're, the rationale, why we're using them, how they are in our practices, and how we're going to use them. And so in the short time that we do have together, I want to show you a little bit about, what is digital? Why are we using it? Why is it important for us in our practices? For those of us who have been using conventional dentistry our whole careers, we may say, I've been doing everything great. Why do I need to change? So if I tell you a little bit about why. We're also going to be talking about scanning, why it's important that we use scanning for splints. Is it impossible to do it without scanning? We'll talk about how it's more possible with scanning. We'll also talk about what the splints workflow is. For those of you who are thinking about considering it or already doing it, I'll show you how I work with splints. And of course, the 3D printing post-processing process, what that looks like, and I'm hoping that some of these advancements will be useful in your practice as well. So I always like to start with quotes, and this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. It says, "Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times." Surely even in the 1400s, they knew that for us to be up to date and knowing what's happening, we have to be changing our contact with the times. So as you know, times are changing all around us. From cell phones to everything else, we're basically looking at technology changing all around us. So with that said, cell phones, how many of us had one of these back then? Self-defense mechanism, get out of the van. No, just kidding. But it got in touch with our families, told them where we're at, basically achieved that. That's about it. But now most of us have, and if not all of us, have some form of a smartphone. I don't even know why they call them smartphones, because I think I've never met or had a phone that's currently not smart. I think all phones are basically doing computer everything in your pocket. But smartphones themselves are able to do LiDAR scan, 4K video, but yet at the same time, we're still getting in touch with our families. So we're still achieving that main task. Not only that, phones are now able to fold them. This is intense. I didn't even know we could do that until I recently saw one in the flesh, and it was just like, oh my goodness, you could actually fold this glass screen. So very neat, very neat. But back to dentistry. What about for us in what we do? How many of us love an articulator? Like mounting and face bow transfer. Have you ever, woken up at night being like, I wish I face bow mounted every case? Well, this is how we learned it in dental school, and I'm sure most of us have taken that articulator, put it in a box, and basically tucked it away. Once we graduated, maybe blow off the dust once in a while to look at it. But anyways, that's articulators. But now we're using technology to not only still use an articulator, but use it in a more digital way. You can see here we have 3D face scans, we have digital impressions, digital articulator. If we had more time, I'd talk a little bit about all those, because there's seminars which I spend a lot of time talking about all those 3D planning methods. But today we want to focus on how digital technology has moved from one way to the other. You can see significantly the big change in which we've gone from articulators to digital articulators. So what I want to hopefully let you see is that, technology is not only all around us for our everyday use, cell phones, all that kind of stuff, but in dentistry, digital technology is going to make us more efficient at what we do. It's giving us shorter visits for our patients, more, improves our skills, makes us better at what we do. Documentation, extremely important. All of these things, we spend time typing notes and making sure that, our butts are covered, but no, just documenting what we've done. But I think that overall technology has endless possibilities. We know that technology, as it evolves, as it changes, it only improves. And many dentists come to say to me and say, am I able to use the technology now? Should I wait 5 years? I urge you to look 5 years before us, where we were and where we are now. I think we're going to be light years ahead in 5 years. So with that being said, the question that we should often ask, and oftentimes people ask, is, well, why do we use digital? Like, what is the point? Like I said before, like you've been doing dentistry your whole career, and maybe you take the best impressions in the world. But the question is, why is it? Well, I would urge you to say not why is digital dentistry important, but what is digital dentistry? What is digital dentistry? Because if we look at it that way, we'll start to break down and unpack how it's going to be useful in your practice. Now, I did my thesis on digital impressions. I was fortunate to be one of the first pioneers in the studies that really evaluated the comparison of digital to conventional crown fabrication and the accuracies. And so because of that, I was able to really, catapult forward a lot of these studies and results showing that basically digital technology was giving us better outcomes than conventional. But I still get the same question. People say, it's just taking an imprint. You're taking a digital impression. I take on the best PVS taker in the world. My PVS impressions are amazing, and my lab can do anything with them. Well, I urge you to look that the digital impression is not just taking an imprint. It's not just data acquisition. If we take that information and just pour a model out of it, we know that the literature has looked at so many errors with that. And also, not only the time and the consumption of products and materials that we need to do that, but it is a transformation in the way of patient treatment. I wish I had more time to be able to show you all the different steps that digital impression is the start for, but it is basically not just taking an imprint. It is the starting point to which we transform treatment of patients. So with that said, what and where, is digital impressions going to make you better? Like, how are we going to be able to do things that make us better? Now, again, this is not a seminar where you're talking about impressions, because we just don't have the time for it, but I want to focus a little bit on the fact that is the starting point. That's what's going to get us to where we need to go for everything that we're going to be doing. So oftentimes, you day by day in your practice, you're basically saying, you need an impression, right? Your patients come in, they're here for diagnostics, for dentures, for crown and bridge. Even if you're doing orthodontics, you say you need an impression. What is the first thing your patient says? What is the thing that they think is going to happen? Here's something funny we found online to show you.
It's no picnic, but I will try to make it as comfortable as possible. All right, thanks. Now, we're going to have to make an impression of your mouth. Oh, I've got a little treat for you. Robin, bring in Stephen Baldwin's mold for Doug to look at. Open wide. All right, now bite down. And, oh, okay. Through your nose, just breathe through your nose. Don't panic.
Don't panic. I think that clip was probably written by a dentist. Do you see all that distraction technique? Bring him bring him the mold so we can look at that. Breathe through your nose. You're probably saying wiggle your toes, all that kind of stuff, right? Now it's funny because it's true. Every day in our practice, we're doing impressions, right? And patients are gonna, have you ever had a patient come in and say, I am looking forward to this impression. I was waking up looking forward to being able to get this impression. Never heard that before. So patients think that, and the reason why they do is because the moment you say that, what do people do? Pick up the phone, they start Googling, what you're talking about. And if you are saying you need an impression, your patient's going to Google. And you go ahead and you Google on your phone, dental impression. This is probably the first thing you're going to see because this is the first thing I saw on Google Images. So you get pictures like this. People go, whoa, that is not something I want to sign up for. Is that something, I want to take every day and, climb out of bed to go get that done in my dentist's office? That's not exactly the funnest kind of thing that happens. That's one image. And you keep scrolling down Google Images, you're going to see things like this. Ooh, that's a silicone impression. That's probably going to take about 5 minutes to set, right? It's not exactly something that you want to get done on you on a regular basis. What about something like this? I think that's, we can tell the patient's tonsils are still there, right? You can see that those are there. Or, what if you're doing a full mouth extraction case? Ooh. Maybe that was intentional. I think they probably did that and maybe somehow charged for full mouth extractions with an impression. That's probably the fastest clearance I've ever seen. Anyways, if you look at those things, it's funny, but the world knows that impressions are not exactly the funnest thing in the world, right? You see, look at this little comic. It says, "Got to make a good first impression," right? Got to make a first good impression because that is the clear and clinical important part of everything that we do. So, according to LMT magazine, they looked at, they basically asked the question to the lab technicians, what's the greatest single one problem that you're having with your dentists? And they didn't say, oh, they don't like the fit, they don't like my prices. They said that 47% overwhelmingly is that they have poor impression taking skills. They don't say this to you because they don't want to lose your business, but they basically say, man, these impressions, I can't deal with them. So dental labs are doing away with conventional as much as they can. They've done this well long before us, so they do everything digital. So if we give them digital impressions to begin with, we're starting off much ahead on what we are doing. So as I mentioned, I do full seminars on digital impressions, so we're not going to spend all that time today talking about it, but we won't have a chance to talk about what it is, how it is, and why we use it, but I want to show you a little glimpse as to why it's important for us to have this as a starting point for everything that we'll be doing moving forward. So not to belabor the point, but if you look at the left and the right side here of the screen, you have basically something that we've seen since literally 1937. I know I speak from experience. I'm sure every one of you has a alginate mixing bowl that looks exactly the same as that, whether you graduated 1970 or 2020. It's the same alginate bowl, the same scoop, right? The same little cup even for measuring. I don't know, they probably make millions of those. But if you look at this patient, watch your eyes. This is the moment you feel the impression. I mean, everybody, dreads this moment where it's like, ooh, right there. It's like, oh, breathe through your nose. Don't worry. Wiggle your toes. Think of the beach. If you look at the right side of the screen, you basically see, digital impression. There's nothing in the patient's mouth except for a mirror touching the lips and a floating wand. So clearly, patients, young and old, are able to do this. I have a 4-year-old, I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. My 4-year-old, when she was 8 months, I scanned her teeth. So you can imagine being able to take an alginate impression of a child that age. So with that said, I think that, most of our practices, if all our patients looked like this, if we had beautiful teeth in all our patients, we'd be doing checkups, recalls, and that's what it. But I know that in all of our practices, we see much more than that. We see a big gambit and variety of patients. But the technology I'm going to show you is useful for all of our patients. It's not just the ones who are missing some teeth or the ones that need to have some things done. We're basically looking at the fact that we have all these things happening. So whether you are doing cases where there's a single tooth missing, multiple teeth missing, we're looking at the same root same tree focus of where things start. We have one goal in which everything comes from the same method. So like I said, as you're either we're missing one tooth, multiple teeth, or all the different teeth, ready to missing teeth, or no teeth whatsoever. We're basically doing the same focus. And what it is I want to show you a patient. I love introducing patients to kind of show you how this all works together in my practice, so you can kind of see how things work in your practice. But this is a very special patient to me. I want to introduce you Dan, who's 39 years old. He said, I got in a bad accident, lost some teeth. Now he actually said teeth because it was not just one tooth. He lost multiple teeth. So for as I mentioned, I'm here in Vancouver. This was a date that was very significant to many who are in the city here, December 9, 2015. But for those of you who are not hockey fans or are not from the city of Vancouver, let me remind you or show you what happened that day.
At the center, it's past Viega, but Kreider peels off on a change and Hughes takes control. Oh, he gave the puck up to Broussard. Sees it up for Boyle. Deflected wide. Oh, they couldn't tuck it in. Miller sprawling, and the net's knocked off. Well, we got an injured Canuck. Dan Hamhuis has been cut. Oh, boy. Dan Hamhuis in some trouble.
That's right. That's Dan Hamhuis, hockey player for the Vancouver Canucks, otherwise known as the Hammer. So Dan is a patient of mine. He's okay with me sharing all this, so not to worry. He's okay with all these pictures and everything. But he was involved in an accident, as most hockey players kind of end up happening, but very publicly got hit in the face with a puck, lost some teeth, and had to get some work done. For those of you who follow hockey, he was originally drafted by the Nashville Predators and then ended up in Vancouver and also Dallas and kind of finished his career back in Nashville. But he lives up in this area and came to see me after his retirement. He said, it's time to fix my teeth, time to get some things done, and so we did some work on his teeth. So again, we're not here to talk about his entire treatment. There's so much stuff that we did. I wish I could show you all of the different 3D plannings that we did, but I want to show you how we jumped fast forward into protecting his teeth afterwards. But basically, Dan himself, came to see us. He's missing some teeth. He had implants placed by various surgeons throughout his career as he was in different places, but did not have them restored. But as you can see here, we have different gingival zenith positions, some chipped teeth, discoloration, and various other things that have been happening throughout his career. But we see patients like this on a regular basis, especially here in the north in Canada. We know people playing hockey. So hockey accidents, bike accidents, snowboarding accidents. I mean, there's so many different things that happen, right? So I'm sure in your practice you see the same. But this is the same philosophy that we like to use for patients who have broken teeth or even worn teeth. So I want to move towards another scenario here. We'll see basically patients who have worn teeth. Remember, if we see patients that look like this, not a whole lot to do, right? We're basically maintaining and monitoring. But we know that patients come to my practice, and I'm sure in yours, that look a little bit more like this. Now, if you see a patient who looks like this, I'm not convinced that they got in a car accident last night and broke off the teeth. This happened over a period of time. So most of our patients, when they come to see us later in age and in life, they have lost vertical dimension. This wear has been happening for a long time. So when that happens, how did it get there? How did it get to a point where it got from day one, where they were teenagers with beautiful teeth, to now as an adult with these kind of worn out teeth? So we want to look quickly at wear patterns. This is important because especially in this time of the pandemic, everybody having very stressful situations happening in their lives. As we start to see people emerging from the pandemic, coming to our practices, we're starting to see a lot more issues with things like wear patterns. So we'll take a quick look at how this is important for us in what we do for splints. So we look at mild wear, we look at moderate wear, and of course severe wear. There's various different categories of it, but mild wear, oftentimes we don't see these patients. They don't see them until they start to have a problem or concern about moderate wear. Of course, certainly people with excessive wear, they're having a tough time, and I see them at that stage. But in your practice, if you have a family practice that you're seeing multiple patients over a long period of time, there's no reason why we should not be able to monitor them and catch it before it gets to excessive wear. Many patients come to see me and say, hey, I've been seeing my doc for 45 years. I don't know why my teeth are so worn now. I see them every 6 months. It's because it's impossible to look at an alginate impression from one to the other and see the wear as it happens. But with digital, we can quantify it. We can actually measure how much wear has happened from day 1 to day 2 to day 3. Okay, so let's take a quick look at, and these are patients that are going to come to see you in your practice. This is, for example, a 48-year-old. We've got Evan, who's got, heavily worn teeth. He literally came to see me saying, I've got these incisal translucencies. The first thing that comes to your mind is like, ooh, he's got some beautiful lithium disilicate veneers, the translucency. Well, he wasn't talking about that. He's talking about thin enamel that was literally breaking off. Just eating, doing normal things, and it's flaking off. You can see through it because it's that thin. That's not good. So that's, what I considered mild to moderate wear, and, it's starting to prompt patients to come in. So that's Evan. What about, 10 years later? We've got a 58-year-old. I'll introduce you to Jason. So Jason's 58 years old. He's a airline pilot with some severely worn teeth. You can see it's very close in position. When we open up, you can see there's quite a bit of wear on those front teeth. And here's what he looks like. Now, he's an airline pilot, and he's a long-haul airline pilot, captain of a plane. He says it's very embarrassing to come and stand in front of the crew and start talking. I mean, now with masks it's different, but during the time, he's just like, people can't take him seriously. He feels like he's self-conscious of how it looks like he got in a fight. He's missing his teeth. And so that's what I consider moderate wear. So we oftentimes will see patients with that. Obviously, they're very concerned about their teeth once you see moderate wear. Then we have, fast forward, 20 years later, we got, William, 78 years old. He comes to see me. He's an elderly man. He says, I've got a lot of implants. I need another implant. I'm like, William, tell me where. He goes, somewhere on the lower. I said, show me. Ew. So when you see that, you say, okay, William, did you get in a car accident last night? He's like, no. He basically has worn these teeth over time. So he was 48-year-old Evan, turned to 50-year-old Jason, and now he's 78-year-old William. So these are patients that are real in your practice that are going to be wearing their teeth. How do we prevent that? How do we protect against that and avoid that from happening? So you see this sort of timeline of these men that I showed you here. Men and women alike. In fact, even children. Like as I mentioned, I have kids. They're grinding their teeth at night. It's a habit that they form from a young age. So we got to be focused on protecting their teeth, making sure we prevent this type of thing from happening. Restorations of someone like William is full mouth reconstruction. We do that all the time. Don't get me wrong. I think we need it sometimes as well. But if we can avoid it, our patients are not looking to get every single tooth crowned when they're older, right? So we hopefully can get that kind of monitored as we go. So as I mentioned before, digital impressions, it is not just taking an imprint. Remember, as you can see, at some of the steps we're going to be doing, it's a transformation in the way of patient treatment. So I hope that you can see that, we're going to change the way that we do things. And as I mentioned, I love quotes. So I started out with that quote there before, about the changes. But now another quote that's very important to me in my practice, because I'm very involved in implants and prosthetics, is that I think the objective of implant dentistry is to provide patients with an aesthetic and functional prosthesis. Aesthetic and functional. Gone are the days where it's no good to just say, it looks great, but it's horrible function. Or the flip side, that it works well, it's a molar, it doesn't matter what it looks like. I certainly believe that if there's a marriage of sort of function and aesthetics, if it looks good, it should function well. If it functions well, it should look good. So because of that, as you can see, our patients, digital treatment planning is going to be critical. I stress this in all my seminars where I talk about lots of the different planning techniques, that it's very important for us to educate our patients. Patients like you see here, they're happy with the final result, but like I said, no one comes to the office excited about an impression. They're not looking to get their teeth crowned. They're not looking to get root canals and extraction implants. I mean, I'm 100% sure you've all heard, sorry doc, nothing against you, but I don't like being here, right? I don't think anybody's actually, not heard that in your practice. So, but if you educate our patients, which we spend a lot of time with the digital to show our patients, then they're aware, they're engaged in their treatment. They know what's the next step. And because of that, they want to proceed to all the things that we're talking about. And when that happens, they're excited. If patients are excited about the treatment they're going to be working on, they're basically going to go and proceed with what's happening. So with that said, occlusal night guards is where we want to focus our next step on. So, night guards, sometimes it's a forgotten subject. I honestly believe it's sometimes an afterthought. Patients will kind of say, what, I need a night guard? And dentists will say, you know what, yeah, you need a night guard. It's one of those things we think about after we're all done. But I urge you to remember, in my situations, I plan treatment where night guards are not an afterthought. They're basically something that I've moved into discussing from our initial onset. So patients know about it from the beginning. So whether it's for night guards for bruxism, TMJ disorders, xerostomia, even just retention of teeth, any patient who's had orthodontics, even implant treatment. We know implants don't move, but natural teeth do. So something like a night guard or a retainer is going to prevent that type of movement. So for those of us who are often scared about night guards, is because they never fit. And oftentimes they just have problems. They don't stay in. And so we look at the literature, the way that it was conventionally made. It's essentially made the way a complete denture was made. What are those steps? I don't want to bore you with that. I know this is not dental school and talking about how it's made, but if this gives you nightmares about dental school, we look at the list here. We basically have an impression. We take it a removal, pour it as fast as we can. Once that's done, the lab does a ton of things. Technically, they're supposed to mount it, do all these types of surveying, and then lots of steps, 14, 15, 16, just keeps going. So because of that, we often get patients who say the same few, comments. They say, I don't need a night guard. I don't grind my teeth. Don't worry. I say it doesn't matter if you're sleeping 8 hours and you're grinding for 8 minutes or 8 seconds. You're still grinding your teeth. Patients will say, why does it have to fit so tight? Good question. It shouldn't fit so tight. In fact, it should fit passively if it's made in a way where your impression is passively taken, such as a digital impression. And then, lastly, people will say, I hate my night guard. It's so uncomfortable. And I heard that all the time. But I've almost never heard that with a digitally printed splint. Patients say, oh my goodness, I can't even feel that it's there. So with that said, we look to our everyday life. We look to Facebook, right? Everything is all our lives are on Facebook. All our learning is from Facebook. No, just kidding. If we look at Dental Clinical Pearls, it's kind of just a site that talks about different, people's sounding board for things that they've have problems with. If you take a look here, this is a dentist who says, I'm on the 4th remake of a hard maxillary night guard. Symptomatic patient. 4th remake? Should be like no remakes. Anyway, it says very tight on the cast and patient's mouth. Well, something is certainly wrong if it's tight everywhere. Cast, patient's mouth, there's a problem. So something was made wrong. They said, is anyone else having similar issues with this product? I'm sure all of you have had a situation where night guard doesn't fit, too tight. Patient doesn't like it, right? This is common. We're not, once in a lifetime situation this patient or this dentist is feeling. As you can see here, posted one night before is already 135 comments. People are kind of like in therapy, kind of like crying about how their night guards don't fit. Just kidding. No, basically, we're all feeling this. Everybody has this. If you've done any night guards whatsoever, you probably had this. And that all comes down to the way the impression was taken, right? We talk about the impression versus, we talked about this one already with the digital versus the alginate. We're pushing on the teeth. When you push on teeth, what happens to them? They get engaged orthodontically into the sulcus. They can compress and move. The alginate sets, the stone sets. All of these things make the tooth not in the same position as when they're rested. Whereas you can see the digital impression, the teeth are floating in space. Normally the way that they're going to be when we put the night guard in. So of course they're going to fit much better already. So as you can see here, we've already talked about the digital impression side of things. We don't need to focus on that as well, but it is a critical point for us to do what we're going to show you next. Doing what we do for splints is going to be a very, very simple workflow, but it requires that our acquisition of data is that way. So what is that workflow? As you can see, there's some nice night guards in the background there. The workflow is simple. There's 4 main steps. 4 main steps. Number 1, we got to scan. We can't do this with a conventional technique. If you do a conventional, your lab's going to have to scan that in a lab scanner so that they can do it digitally, which is sort of counterproductive. So we scan, we do digital impressions. Once you do that, you design it. There are very easy ways to design it. I'm going to show you how to do that. Very simple with a click of a mouse. Then we go ahead and we print it, just like printing a document from your office printer. You press print and it goes ahead. And then once we're done that, we got to post-process it. We got to finish it. We got to cure it. Got to clean it up. So I'm going to show you these 4 simple steps. Now, these 4 simple steps are essentially, if we timed it out, what is the time that it takes to do that? Or what is the flow? This is sort of a standard occlusal night guard flow, taking from the scan. It takes seconds to do the scan. We can get a night guard into a patient's mouth in about 2 hours. So you may say 2 hours, that's a lot of work. I can't do 2 hours. Can I do 2 hours? It's going to take a while. If you look at most of that, it's going to be 30 minutes of printing, but curing is a while, 65 minutes. That's going to take a while. But thankfully, SprintRay has been amazing to really promote a lot of new and innovative techniques, and they've come and brought it down from an hour and 54 minutes or 55 to 54 minutes. Now, 54 minutes doesn't seem like wow, this is still an hour, but you know what? More than half of that is printing on a printer, where you don't have to do anything. You set it up, or one of your staff sets it up, it prints. Once it prints, we're getting the cure down from 65 minutes down to 4 minutes. And how do we do that? I'm going to show you. There's some amazing technology that's really bringing that to make things faster for us. But this is where really rubber meets the road. This is, same day insert. This is patients get the night guard, they get the scan, they get the night guard before they go sleep that one night. We're not talking about taking impression, come back in 2 weeks with our lab making it. We got it right away. So that's what we say is welcome to chairside night guards. And never before have we been able to do that. Chair side splints. I mean, we can have this made for our patient. We insert in the morning. We have it from by lunchtime. So that's amazing. So back to that workflow. What are the steps? What are the simple steps that I talked about? Number one is we have to scan. This is not possible to do without a digital impression. If we do this without a digital impression, we take more than an hour just to pour it, let it set, trim it. We've already lost all that time. So as you can see here, the digital scan, which takes literally 30 seconds to scan per arch, maybe less if you're extremely fast, maybe more if you're new, but it's not a lot of time. In fact, your staff can be scanning it for you. You can be basically having this done without basically any part of the dentist chair time as well. But once we scan our patients, we take that, we have digital data, we go ahead and we take that and we put it into our design. As simple as that. We scanned it and now we move it to design. So from the scan, what do we do for the design? Some of us who are really tech savvy, you want to really go on your computer and click around. I use Splint Studio. I design my own splints because I'm very particular about how they are. It takes me about 10 minutes to scan it or design it. When most people learning how to use this sort of software may take you 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. So some people say that's a little bit too long, but I can do it in 8 to 10 minutes. But that sometimes is still too long. You don't want to sit there and click a computer. You don't want to do that. No worries, I get it. We can now use cloud software. So SprintRay themselves have a cloud system where you scan it, upload it to the software there. You can plan it where you can get this back so quickly that you basically within minutes to hours you can have your scan designed. Not only that, they've come up with a new system called AI, artificial intelligence. We know everything's artificial intelligence now, but basically they can design splints on the cloud system with using AI and design that within minutes. So that is literally giving you your splint design so that you can print it right away. But let's go back to sort of how I do it. I use Splint Studio from 3Shape. There are various different companies that have planning softwares. But what you want to do is you essentially use your scanner, anything you want to put it into it and you start designing. Just like if any of you are using a 3Shape Trios or anything like that, you'll know that the software is very similar to what they use for everything. This bar that goes along the top basically goes from left to right, showing us that each step is complete. You just go to the next one. So as I mentioned, I can design a splint in 8 to 10 minutes, no problem. And basically the software is very easy. It guides you through all these different ways, but it still requires you to click and make the mouse, click the mouse and make this. So if you got time in your hands and you love doing this, great, you have full control over it. It doesn't cost you anything more than obviously the software, but you're not designing it and kind of making it, and you basically can have the ability to design whatever you like. But like I said, many of us are not tech savvy to do that, or don't have the time or desire to stand there or sit there and kind of design your own night guards. So in that case, we send it away. SprintRay has been great to develop a really simple platform. You make a small prescription. They basically have their, your standard settings. Let's say you have a standard setting, a design that you like. As simple as your staff scanning and sending it, you have a design back right away. You don't even have to lift a finger, literally. You can basically use their cloud software. So as I mentioned, AI is a new system that they've come up with where on the cloud, they basically can use AI to design it, and from the click of the mouse on the cloud system, be connected to your internet to print on your printer. Extremely fast. So the settings that they have on there are extremely simple to use, and I urge you to at least take a look at that. So it's really changed the way that many have been able to use this for chairside splints. Now, as we know, the types of splints that we can design, people often ask, what kind of splints? Is it sort of one generic type? Well, if you look at this list here, if you make any type of these splints, or even if it's not on the list, anything you can design, you can make. If your printer can print it, it can be done. So essentially, printers can print almost any shape you put in there. If you want to make canine, Halloween teeth for your patients, you can do that in, chairside as well. This is kind of the possibilities are endless. So this is where I think technology has really moved forward for us and for you. But as I mentioned, the workflow is simple, right? This simple 4 steps. We've already scanned, we've already designed it. For those of you who are using cloud software or decide to use that, your assistant scans it, your assistant sends it away to the design, your assistant prints it, and your assistant finishes it. We don't have to do it, the dentist chair time is not being used. Like I said, people say, well, when an hour of chair time? It's like, no, it could be 0 chair time. But if you're savvy on it and you really want to do it, you scan it, you can design it. You can print it and you can finish it yourself as well. That's the flexibility in it. Now, as I mentioned before, sometimes dentists that I talk to in the seminars, they'll say, hey, I don't know if 3D printing's there yet. Maybe in 5 years, I think I'll jump on board. Well, if you take a look at this picture, this is splints that I printed, they just come out of the printer, they're dripping wet with the resin. But if we just look to our normal life, our everyday life, YouTube, of course, our everyday life, you just search 3D printing. I would tell you that there's basically 3 different layers or types of printing. So if you take a look here, the first is very simple. You can go get it at your local, electronics store, buy a filament printer that just puts in literally plastics, strip and basically layers it on top of each other, printing it in 3D. This is not extremely accurate, but it's fun. You can make toys, you can do anything you want, but clearly we're able to print things in 3D very easily. In Dubai, of course, everything in Dubai is huge and amazing. So they printed the world's biggest 3D printed building. So we're talking about almost 10 meters tall building that's 3D printed. So that's amazing. I mean, people are able to make structures out of that. But my personal favorite is this one over here, where we have my favorite TV show, Top Gear, talking about cars. This is the world's first 3D printed hypercar. So we're not talking about, parts of it are printed. The entire car, other than obviously the rubber and stuff like that, but it is a 3D printed hypercar where they get the tolerance levels to make gears and contraption and parts that fit together. So when when clients or when dentists come and say to me and say, hey, I don't know if 3D printing is there yet. I certainly believe if they can print a 3D printed hypercar, we're okay to print splints with it. I think it's definitely and certainly there for what we need. And I'm going to show you that we can and have been doing that. So with that being said, as you can see, this is a look inside the printer itself. The printer comes up. This is the SprintRay printer that I use here. Basically what you're seeing is the inside of it prints from down up. There's a resin tank that is filled with resin, which essentially is the liquefied, going to be printed plastics, and it comes up in a layer by layer method. And the printer itself is going to do that over a period of about 45 minutes. 30 minutes, as it said there, if it's a thicker splint. And then if you stand it up tall and make it like a large base, then it goes higher and longer from there. But essentially what you're seeing there is essentially lifting up and everything's dripping away from that. So this is an image you may see oftentimes with what a 3D printing is like. But as I mentioned, the workflow is simple. 4 simple steps. Scan, which we have to do. As I mentioned, we can't do the other method. We design it, whether in-house or on the cloud. Print it, and certainly this will be printed in-house now with the simple and simplified ways of doing that. And post-process, we got to clean it up, get it ready. So as we're talking about Bruxism appliances, the good thing about it is not this printer is just printing Bruxism appliances. We're talking about printing everything from night guards to surgical guides, models, whatever have you. Everything that we have there, we're basically printing and being able to use. And so the 3D printer is extremely useful. My lab, I have an in-house lab technician, is basically going to be printing models, dies, everything that we need for it. So it's basically, you can even print crowns now. There are some materials to do that. So the amazing thing is it depends on the types of materials that you have. As you can see on the bottom here, we're going to have a list of different types of materials, and this is just one list. There's so many different things where we can, from models to gingival masks. You can print those. You can print the silicone gingival mask, which is intense. I didn't know you could print that before, right? And none of you really probably knew that either. But that model that has a silicone mask, you can print that on there. We can be doing things like night guards, of course, surgical guides. And what's very important and exciting is we can now even print with the OnX material that SprintRay put out is a nanoceramic, printed nanoceramic. Very strong. This is stronger than just ceramic, just acrylic, because it has ceramic embedded in it. And so that's amazing. We can basically print something very strong for things like immediate all-on-4, all-on-5 sort of prostheses that we can kind of scan, design, and make on the spot. So that is extremely important that we can use technology now. So I can't stress it enough. Simple as saying this. We scan, we design, we print it, and we go ahead and we post-process. So I'll show you what the post-processing looks like. We've already talked about the design and the scanning part, and of course the printing is the next part. So there are various printers on the market. There's so many different ones. If you were to go to the dental shows, you're going to see basically a whole list of different printers. They all have different pros and cons. But I urge you to know that most of these printers are printed for or made for industry. Different industries, which dentistry is not really their focus. But the SprintRay printers printed or fabricated and made for dentistry as a focus. So they are laser focused on the way that we need it for what we do. But either way, no matter what, the printing process is similar for basically all of them. There's 2 main ways: stereolithography and DLP. Stereolithography is the original old-style printing. Basically, it's a method in which we would basically layer it with a light cure and basically polymerize each layer spot at laser at a time. So this will take a while, like 24 hours to print like a model. Now we do DLP, which is digital light processing, similar, but it's with a mirror reflecting light in different positions so that we can basically have a full layer in one swipe of it, and it prints layer by layer and decreases the time significantly, so much faster than stereolithography. So as I mentioned, the SprintRay printer is one that I use in my practice. There are many different types, but I landed on this one because I feel that it basically has the flexibility for us to do what we need in dentistry the way that we need. But if you're looking for a printer, you want to make sure you have one and look for one that has the ability for us to do the applications that we need for dentistry. So whether that's printing models or dentures or splints, we need to be able to have that flexibility to use it. So wide range and the base to be able to do that. Some printers are too big, some are too small. So you got to make sure you do that. Also, the types of models. How do we do it? How do we make it? Let's quickly show you when you put it onto the software. So there's the cloud version. There's also the desktop version. You basically position your models on the printing plate. So on the right side, you see the printing plate. You position it where it is so that when it turns upside down, it's going to print exactly like that. The advantage to what I can do with the software is that you can even use third-party resins. Some of the printers will allow you to only use their resin, so you're kind of locked into one type, so you don't get the advantages of being able to use different types of resin. The good thing about this printer is that we're able to use various third-party resins. So you're going to like a certain resin over another, but you can use that for all of them. So as my favorite for the splints right now is Keystone Key Splint Soft. There's also the SprintRay has their own type as well too, which I've been testing, and it's very close and very similar. So I've been using that as well. But as you can see here, model basing is very simple. How we do that, is click of a mouse. Scan comes in a certain way. We go ahead and we press fix, and a computer thinks about it and does it for you. Basically puts the little printing scaffold so that it can print very nicely for you, or you can put a nice base to make a solid model to do that. So it's very simple. Computer is amazing at that now. We don't have to think about it too much. Then, of course, we can do what's called pixel toning. This is something that SprintRay's come up with, which really increases the definition of the printing. So you can see on the left side of your screen, this is what a lot of times people equate 3D printing with. Layer by layer, you can see all the layers. But now we can get that really crisp print when we use their pixel toning. So this is allowing us to get that, break down some of that barrier between the sharpness and quality of the printing. So then we go to the print. How do we do it? What are the steps? Very simple, right? As you see here, I've designed it. There's various ways to put it upright or tilted flat on its side. I decided in this case, in this video, just to show you that one upright. Then the computer tells me where to go. This is me in my office. It basically shows me I need to put it to the minimum, medium, or the maximum level. It's very important that you put it right to wherever they tell you to do that, so you don't have too much or too little resin. Then we go ahead and we go back to our computer and press print. If this is either on your desktop or on the cloud software and AI, you basically press it, and just like printing a document on your laser printer for your page, your document, it just goes to the printer. It just processes it and gets it going. Then you go to your printer and you make sure that's ready. In this case, this video showed a long 3-hour print because they're standing upright. If they're down, you're going to look at a half an hour to 45 minutes. As you can see here, once that's done printing, we go ahead and we open the door, and here you are. You're going to see the dripping printings already, like T-1000 in the Terminator movies, right? No, so that's not ready yet. You can't put that in a patient's mouth, clearly. We're not going to put that, take that off the base and put it right in a patient's mouth. So then we go to the fourth and final simple step, which is post-processing, right? What happens to it? What do we do from the printing step to putting it in a patient's mouth? So we got to take it off the base, of course. It's simple, just kind of break them off. They're printed on there, and they just come right off the metal base. But we got to go wash them. You got to wash your dishes, you got to wash everything. So you got to wash your splints. But basically we use a ultrasonic to wash that with isopropyl alcohol and a brush. So you can manually do this by hand. Or in my case, I use the the wash system. So it's very simple. It's like a dishwasher. Those of you who like to wash your dishes by hand, some of you like to put it in the dishwasher. You let your dishes set in the dishwasher. You're basically doing the same thing here. You put it in the washer. It's going to spin the isopropyl alcohol, push it right up into the area, clean everything from the inside, the outside of everything on your splints, on your models. And you can see it's I climbed inside the washing machine to show you this. No, just kidding. They made a really good video to show how it works. It dries it off for you, and basically you take it off and you have models ready to use, ready to cure. Sorry, we're not ready to use yet, but ready to finish them. So the next step, this is sort of the last and final step, is to final cure them. So if you final cure something, it's just like light curing. We gotta basically put it in the rave box or the nightclub box. No, just kidding. It's basically a light cure box that hardens the final cure of your splints. So this part takes a while. So conventionally, this is the ProCure 1 by SprintRay. Basically, it cures it in about 50 minutes, 55 minutes. It takes a while. It's like an hour. And so that can take a little bit of time. But thankfully, they've been very good. And here's just a sort of a graphic of what that looks like. Basically, I have my splints in there, sitting in there, tanning for an hour. No, just kidding. But we've brought that down significantly. So that was a big barrier, having it sit in that, that for a while. So they've come up with what's called the ProCure 2, which is a huge leap in the time that it takes to do this. Now, as I mentioned before, it's usually about an hour or so to kind of cure something. We brought this down to 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes tops. So this is I can't even warm food fast enough. 2 minutes is how long it takes me to make my lunch and warmed up on a microwave. But you can basically finish your night guard in 2 minutes. So when that happens, we put it through the light cure. It has a light motion drive that basically cures it at a much faster rate. So you can see it's 10 times faster. Wow, that's huge. ProCure 1 versus ProCure 2. So basically it's a huge benefit, which, as you saw before, this is what's going to make us be able to deliver our night guard from start to finish in less than an hour. So that's amazing. So as I mentioned, 3D printing, this is critical. Why do we need to use it? Why do we have it for our patients? I have a patient who had, severe bruxism. They had a lot of problems with their teeth. They were breaking off teeth, as you see here. He's got implants in weird positions. A previous dentist had done that. We had to do some gymnastics to kind of really make this work. Long story short, ended up clearing the teeth, taking out a couple of those implants, and placing a sort of an all-on-5, all-on-6 sort of situation. We did a scenario where, you see in her lower arch, she has what's called a conus or an old-style abutment system, which if you're not wearing your lower denture, which she doesn't wear at night, we would be severely damaging our top teeth. She could not go one night without this. So on the day of delivery of that hybrid, as you see on the top, acrylic hybrid, we go ahead and we print and make a night guard for her. Splint is put in place, so it is made so that it bites both with her denture in and with the denture out. So either way, we're protecting all this work we put on top. She doesn't go one night without this splint. So you can see here, this is amazing. This is making one day delivery. We're basically able to provide for our patients. So as you can see, patients with complex rehabilitations, or even someone like we saw before. We've got Dan, the hammer. Remember? We were able to customize it. We even put his name on that. He loved it. He thought, oh my goodness, my name is printed into my night guard. And so this is just to show what it looks like for someone like Dan.
All right, so today we're putting in our nice 3D printed night guard, printed with the Keystone Splint soft material. We're basically going to warm that up just for a few seconds in the warm water here. That was designed on 3Shape Splint Studio, and then we printed it with our SprintRay printer. And then here we go. I'm going to give this a try right here. And we'll see how that fits. There we go. Everybody together there. Tap, tap, tap. And grind side to side. Forward and back. And how's that feel?
Very comfortable.
Very good?
Yeah.
Does it feel tight on any of the teeth on the sides?
No, it doesn't.
Does it feel like it's pulling on any of the teeth?
No,
It feels pretty passively on there, right?
it does, yeah.
Nice. Okay, well there you go. So Dan has a nice new night guard here. Again, designed 3Shape Splint Studio and printed 3D printing. So excellent outcomes from our 3D printed night guards. There you go.
So there you have it. Basically, in one day, we inserted everything for Dan that morning, and we were able to give him his night guard that afternoon. Dan doesn't live in the city. He lives pretty far away in the rural communities here in British Columbia. So he's not exactly easy to just come back for his night guard. And so we didn't want to go one night without it. I mean, he's invested a lot into his teeth. And so basically being able to do that for our patients, and you will be able to do for your patients with just simple 4 steps, really brings now ahead the things that we could do for our patients, right? And we've talked about chair-side fabrication of night guards. Have you ever heard of that going through dental school? Not at all possible. Remember, the hour to make this is how long it would take me to take the impression, pour it up, trim it, send it to my lab. Take even longer than that, right? So we're looking at the very, very advanced procedures that are now being able to be done very simply. So you design it, you scan it, you design it, we're printing it in office, and then we post-process it with a nice wash system. Simple as that. So that's the amazing part about digital treatment planning. So someone like Dan, who had a beautiful outcome, which I wish I would be able to show you the steps we did, because if we had time, we would go through all the different design steps. But it's just to show you that a patient who's gone through a lot, who needs to have something protected, they need to have digital treatment planning. All of your patients, whether they're having an implant, single tooth implant, or they're maintaining their teeth to prevent wear, as we showed you earlier in all those patients. We need to educate our patients, because when we educate our patients, they're fully engaged in what's happening. Again, as I mentioned, I want to stress it again, no patient's going to be wanting to come back to see you on a regular basis, and in my case, they come a lot for big treatments, if they're not engaged. And so this is patients literally being excited about their treatment. They come and say, hey, you know what? We're finished step number 2. We're ready for step number 3. When's the next step? And in fact, someone like Dan said at the end, I think my night guard's next. That's the last thing, right? And I said, yes, because we talked about it from the very beginning. Remember that tree that has all the same different branches from the same tree. So it's important for us to know that, for someone like Dan and for all our patients, we got to remember that the critical first step is digital impressions. Please remember that it is not just taking an imprint. It's not like, just acquiring data. It is, in fact, a complete transformation in the way of patient treatment. So something like, as you saw for Dan, we did everything digital, from his crown fabrication, implant surgery, all that kind of stuff. Now we're talking about his night guard, made digitally and within an hour. So that is kind of complete transformation. If that's not a transformation in the way of patient treatment, I don't know really what is. So as we started out at the very beginning of this, we had, cell phones. Many of us, still remember these as a relic, and I hope that you still have one. If you still have this one, keep it. It's probably worth a ton. But most of us have moved forward. We know that it is not practical to be carrying around a brick in your pocket, but now we carry a cell phone like this. So we have all adapted in our everyday life. And as well, when it comes to, even and more advancements, we're not all getting flip phones that are made of glass, but it is there. That technology has now even leapt forward for that. And so for those of us, who are doing conventional dentistry, whether it's, with wax ups, that take your lab, I don't know, hours, if you're a dental student, maybe weeks, to sort of digitizing everything, where we're having wax ups all done digitally. We're able to present that to our patients. If I had a chance, I wish I could show you with Dan and others how we do this for our patients to move them forward to their treatment, showing them the wear patterns, showing them all that on a computer screen. Now, if we look at the splints that we've talked about, the conventional way was making it like a denture. Remember all those steps that we saw from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 15, 16 plus, so many different steps. All of those are things that are meant for us to move, the old way. But now with technology, we've seen how we can do this with a new and more innovative method. We basically have printing that is as simple as 4 steps. And so as you can see here, as I hope that I've had a chance to show you today, that essentially, as we started out with this quote, whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. It's just so true to the way we do things every day and even today. But for those of us here that love hockey in BC, so where we're at, digital dentistry is quoted by this, he's not typically quoting digital dentistry, but Wayne Gretzky, the great one himself. As I mentioned, I love hockey. All these references with Dan to now Wayne. I'm sorry, I call him Wayne. He should be Wayne Gretzky, Mr. Wayne Gretzky. But he was quoted saying, go where the puck is going. Go where the puck is going. This is a quote that is important, I think, for us because, he was the best in the game. He knew that the puck was going down ice. He was going to, he's going to chase after. He's not going to stand still and just watch it go past him. Just like for us, we're not standing still because digital technology is not standing still. It's moving forward. So I urge you to think of it that way and remember that, we need to go where the puck is going. If the great one is doing that, for us to be great at what we do, we move forward as well too. So I thank you so much for your time. It's such an honor and privilege to be here with you. There's always questions about this stuff that always comes up. I think the easiest to get in touch with me is on Instagram. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me. I want to spend just a minute, talking about a couple of questions that almost always come up when I talk about this. And basically, people ask things like, is this only possible with digital impressions? I would say that it is not impossible with a conventional impression, but we're not gaining the benefits from it. We're not gaining the benefits from the ability to scan, design, print, and post-process. Remember those 4 easy steps. And people often always ask me, is it critical that the type of materials or what we use? And I would say that the beauty of this technology is that we can use different materials for different scenarios. I'm using a soft splint or a hard splint, depending on the patient's needs. But I have full control over that now in my office because I can print it on my printer. So those are kind of key elements that oftentimes people ask me. And a third question that people often ask me is, I don't like technology. I'm not that great at it. I love technology, but I'm not that good at it. How do I get into this? And then, so the answer, as I've hopefully kind of shown throughout, is that, these parts can be delegated throughout your office or even through cloud software. So you don't have to do much anymore if you're not. You can do as much or as little of the steps that you like. So for me, I love technology, so I'm designing, I'm printing, I'm doing a lot of things. And it's hard for me to kind of delegate certain things sometimes. I want to just kind of do a lot of the steps. But for those of you who, don't scan very much, maybe there's someone in your office that can scan. Maybe they can send it off for you and design it. Someone else in your office can do the printing part. You can basically delegate almost every step of this. So the beauty of it is that it brings it now to a level where we can really be as involved or as little involved as we like. So anyways, again, thank you so much for your time. As I said, if there's other questions, please keep in touch. Email, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. Check out my YouTube page, see some content there, and we'll hopefully be in touch. And thanks again for all that we do. Take care. See ya.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ng, for such an informative presentation. We did record tonight's webinar, so it'll be available to you within 1 week. We appreciate your feedback via the short survey that will pop up on your screen momentarily. I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you back here on future webinars. Have a great night.